What's up, guys? Saul here. Today I'm about to get into Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror by John Ashbery. It's a famously it's a famously difficult poem by a famously difficult poet. And today I want to see how much I can sort of engage with this poet and this poem, even though I don't really know that much about it, besides my just general, you know, familiarity with poetry and literature. And even me, I'm not even the best English like major in the world. I can't like drop references to I don't know, to like Milton or Wordsworth, or like I can't just be doing that all the time because it's not something I've been like super into compared to a lot of other English majors out there. But I do have a general sense of, like what I enjoy in reading. I have my own taste when it comes to poetry, and so I'll be trying to like get at. I'm gonna try to like crack this poem. I'm gonna try to crack this poem, not intellectually, not intellectually so much as like sort of emotionally and at a sort of like playful level, and see um, how far I can get, how successful I can be on those axes. So I'll be getting into it now. First thing I'm going to do, as I always do, is I'm going to do a little bit of pre-reading, and the primary purpose of this is to increase my excitement about reading the thing, and I particularly aim at getting genuine reactions, emotional reactions to this poem or to the work. I don't like focusing so much on people's analysis, because analysis is good for writing essays for school, but it's not really that great for enjoying works of art. So I want to focus on like people's genuine emotional reactions to these works, and that's what I'm going to look for right now. Hung, welcome to the stream. You're aiming for 1500 plus on the SAT. Good luck with the SAT. Okay, I'm going to look at the Wikipedia article for Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror, the collection first. So, the only book to have received all three. It was a major breakthrough after a career marked by relative obscurity and either lukewarm or outright hostile reviews. Okay. When he was approaching the age of 50. So this was when he was pretty old. I actually did not know this. So he was pretty, like, yes, even in 1956, Auden was all about John Ashbery. But this was published when? In 1975, much later. Because the New York School of Poetry didn't really receive that much as much like attention as like the Beats, who came out of Columbia, and they were much more political. They were more savvy, and like they were just more hip with the times. The New York School of Poets, they were very just like artsy fartsy. So brutally negative reviews. I wonder what that is. Incomprehensible, absent of any redeeming qualities, which almost drove Ashbery to quit writing poetry altogether. Interesting. Kind of want to know that, but oh well. I don't want to read that book just to figure that out. So he was grouped with the so-called New York School. He thought the label was ridiculous because he lived in Paris, not New York. Sure. They were all friends. His early poems are too difficult. I'm not trying to be difficult for its own sake. It's meant to reflect the difficulty of the living, of the ever-changing, minute adjustments that go around. Anyway, it's, what a suffering artist. So, AB, okay, welcome to the stream. Seems like you guys are all stressing out about the SAT. Guys, all I'll say is, guys, congratulations. You did it. You did it. Now you're done. All you can do now is focus on the rest of life. You know what I mean? And wait for your scores to come back. So this is interesting because this is getting at maybe one of the initial inspirations for self-portrait in a convex mirror, because self-portrait in a convex mirror is actually the name of his of the poem that I'm about to read, and it's actually the name of a painting by Parmigianino. Okay, it's actually the name of a poem of a painting. So getting into his initial reaction to that would be potentially pretty interesting. I'm just realizing something, like I should highlight what I'm reading so that you guys can actually follow along. But the problem is I'm having huge problems with Chrome. Anyway, he's pursuing an MA, Columbia, no plans. He's going to postpone the exams. He's on the train home from Boston. He read the random article about Parmigianino. The strangeness and perfection of the whole enterprise. The dreamlike image of the beautiful young man, especially its title. Huh. This was in 1959, by the way. 1959. And the poem actually came out in 1975. So that was a long time in the cooking, man. Hunky glory, hips slightly caught. Very Walt Whitman. Tight slacks, no belt loops. Ill-advised and stylish. Cheap romance novel. That is actually kind of hilarious. This was literally the self-portrait. Man, that is kind of hilarious. The reverberations between the two works, if you could see both of them. This is considered accessible. So this is actually not as hard as his earlier work, but sure. Obviously, Ashbery doesn't ever agree with the critics, so that's what happens. Watergate? Interesting. Oh, Harold Bloom had a whole thing on this. Okay. Do I think Rush for vocab is the best? No, it's not. Like, what? It's like the opposite of what I think. Much of the early literary critic and peer opinion was highly influenced by Harold Bloom, an early champion of Ashbery who predicted the poet come to dominate the last third of the century as Yeats dominated the first. The anxiety of influence. Ralph Waldo. Okay. So, dude, Bloom is a whole other thing that I could get into. Who's Schultz right now? Susan M. Schultz. Yeah, a lot of people hate Bloom. All right, this is too much of the academic infighting, so I'm going to skip that. Shocked by the accolades, a great surprise. It made him super, super famous. Such unanimous praise and admiration, which was surprising because he was so hated before. Interesting. Okay. So that's just pretty general. I'm trying to get more into maybe people's... Wow, come on, Chrome. Stop freaking out. I would like to get more into people's actual emotional reactions to this poem. So it might be more interesting to see stuff on YouTube. Ooh, a lecture. That might be fun, but only after I actually read it. I don't want to go straight to a lecture. By the way, I have a mosquito in front of me. Let me deal with this mosquito in a sec. Whoa, that was noisy. Okay. Bye bye, mosquito. So I don't want to get into all these academic stuff yet. I want to get into let's do Goodreads. Okay, let's do Goodreads. I want to read reviews by people who actually like enjoyed it, and some reviews by people who hated it. So I want to read those. Can I explain? Hey Hung, today I won't be talking so much about the SAT. I'll be focusing on this poem in front of me. So yeah, just all I say is, vocabulary, it takes a long time to improve, but the other reading skills don't take as much time. It sounds like you're studying for the December SAT. So if you are studying for December SAT, you can ask me more questions about it in the Discord server or in like future streams that are more about the SAT. Well, I mean, God, so beautiful, but also Ashbery sizing up the same kind of moral question over and over a dozen times in the space of a poem with dozens of poems, just wrung me utterly dry. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. This is interesting because it's a very casual sounding review, so I kind of like this because we can maybe get more of the emotional reaction here. Preemptory surface reading. All this happened before. Dana. Who is Dana? Are you referring to somebody specific? Okay. Authentic about the experience of being human. Beauty. Queen Anne's lace. Dragonflies. Suffocated. Meaning. Thanks and goodbye. So that's funny. The actual review sounds like it's more like 2 stars, but what are these comments? Let's see. Interesting. If the first or last poem doesn't touch some pink, squishy area inside of you, you may be dead or possibly just an asshole. It's okay, interesting. We do get a lot of emotional reactions here. I like the spirit of songs, though. The camaraderie, that is the last thing to peel off, visible even now on the woven pattern of branches in twilight. Why must you go? Why can't you spend the night here in my bed with my arms wrapped tightly around you? This is very, very accessible. This is very not the Ashbery that I know. Am I allowed to dislike this? Am I going to be thrown out? So people are clearly referring to how famous he is. So this is very like self-conscious reading. I want to have more of a direct response. This is a lot of informational stuff. It's a little analytical. Let me see. Ambiguity is a major thing to be focusing on, sure. Charm, adolescent sexuality, difficult modern poetry. Okay, it's a little too academic. I'm going to skip that one. New York, where I am now, which is a logarithm of other cities. Wow, what a crazy line. Anyway, okay, that was a little too much just like word salad. God, is this boring, super pretentious, totally uninteresting, made me crave Louise Gluck. Does anyone write like this now? Everyone's so, because the people who read poetry are such like poetry majors slash like writers. So the Goodreads reviews are so different. Holy crap. Okay, here we go. The title poem makes me want to weep. It's so fucking beautiful, so indelible. I'd start citing, but I'd probably transcribe the poem's entirety, maybe just one, and probably an overquoted line, but deservedly so. The secret is too plain. The pity of it smarts, makes hot tears spurt. That the soul is not a soul, has no secret, is small, and it fits perfectly No, and it fits its hollow perfectly. Its room, our moment of attention. I see why this poem, I see why this Ashbery is considered more accessible. After all, he is the head of the epistemological revolution in American poetry. Sure. Okay. Like falling asleep in the sunlight on a long train ride. Well, how very impressionistic. A fraction here, a lisp where it didn't matter. That sounds like a quotation. Is that a quotation? There is so much emotion and inspiration and genuine beauty. I read it in 3 days. Okay. You know, all I know is that a lot of people have very powerful emotional reactions to it, and that's it. That's all I know. It's more accessible. It's more accessible than other Ashbery books, collections, I mean. So this is the title poem in that collection that's considered more accessible. I have read very, very inaccessible poetry before in my past, in the past. So I do feel like I'm more or less equipped to get into this. I want to pick up on the beauty. I want to pick up on the sort of like. There was a pretty good review earlier that like sussing out the sum of all things or something like that, and it was a good line. It was a good review, the first review that came out in Goodreads. But it's kind of talking about like, but that person was exasperated by all the beauty. But here I want to get into John Ashbery's sensibility. I want to feel the world. I want to feel this language the way he feels this world, his language. So I want to get into that, and that's my primary focus right now. Okay, I'm just gonna get into John Ashbery's head and sort of just like let the delights unfold. Okay, here we go. Self-portrait in a convex mirror. John Ashbery, 1974. Now, first problem. Parmigianino. I need to know how to pronounce this because it's going to harm Parmigianino. It's going to harm my reading if I can't pronounce this thing. So, let's do it. How come I can't hear my own audio? I think you guys can hear the audio. Okay, I'm going to put on my earphones to see if I can force it to send the audio to me.
Massive her lap because in that sculpture area.
We were looking at the great Mannerist painting by Parmigianino called Madonna with a Long Neck. It's a fun painting.
It's a tall painting.
It's big, and Madonna is big. She's big in funny places.
Interesting. I didn't know Khan Academy did art history. That's interesting.
Mannerist painting by Parmigianino called
Parmigianino. Okay, there we go. Also, Parmigianino's style is pretty interesting. This is pretty, look at that. That is a long neck. And it's literally titled Madonna of the Long Neck. What the hell is going on outside? Give me a second. Is there like some sort of sports event that's happening involving Korea? I have no idea. All right, here we go. As Parmigianino did it. There we go. And by the way, it does help to actually see the thing. So Parmigianino self-portrait. So it's good to see it. So this is the actual portrait that he's looking at since like 1959 or something like that. And then he finally writes the poem in 1974, publishes the poem in 1974. So here we are. As Parmigianino did it, the right hand, bigger than the head, thrust at the viewer and swerving easily away as though to protect what it advertises. A few leaded panes, old beads, fur, pleated muslin, a coral ring run together in a movement supporting the face. Ooh, that's interesting. A coral ring run together in a movement supporting the face. So the whole movement of all of this in the circle, okay, the whole movement. Oops, whoa, what is that? The whole movement of this, you can't see my mouse, sad. The whole movement of this is the thing that is supporting the face. What an interesting phrase. Which swims toward and away like the hand, except that it is in repose. The face is in repose, it's resting. It is what is sequestered. Vasari says Francesco one day set himself to take his own portrait, looking at himself for that purpose. Okay, quick technical issue. I want to move my poem, okay, into my iPad because I'm having major sort of like, what do you call it? Like technical graphical errors right now. So I want to move it to my iPad. Give me 1 second. Ah, dude, what the? Now it's losing connection. Okay, there we go. Now it works. And now you can even see my mouse. That's good. Okay. So it is what is sequestered. It's supported, it's in repose, it's also sequestered. Sequestered. And that's interesting. It's an interesting description of a face over here. You know, it's like supported by this whole circle. It's separated. It is in repose. Vasari says Francesco one day said himself. Is Francesco, what's Parmigianino's first name? Who's Vasari? Okay, a painter. Parmigianino. What's his first name? Francesco Mazzola or Parmigianino. Okay. Used by barbers. Ball of wood, Turner, divided, size of mirror, set himself, great art, copy. So he did it very, and he did his own reflection, of which the portrait is the reflection once removed from the reflection. So we're very meta about this right now. The glass chose to reflect only what he saw, which was enough for his purpose. Which this line, for some reason, I always remember it. Okay, every time I read it, I like remember it. This glass chose to reflect only what he saw, which was enough for his purpose, because what he sees is good enough. His image glazed, embalmed, projected at a 180-degree angle. The soul establishes itself. But how far can it swim out through the eyes? So we're talking about the soul swimming out through the eyes. And still returns safely to its nest, the surface of the mirror being convex. Just gonna move this over real quick. The distance increases significantly. So we have kind of like the soul coming through the eyes and just bouncing around. The point that the soul is a captive, treated humanely, kept in suspension. So one of the reasons why this is accessible is it actually says things that make sense. You know, you can actually follow along in sentences. Pope Clement and his court were stupefied by it, according to Vasari. They were like, what the hell? The whole soul has to stay where it is, even though restless, hearing raindrops at the pane, the sighing of autumn leaves thrashed by the wind, longing to be free outside. But it must stay posing in this place. It must move as little as possible. This is what the portrait says. It has to stay still. But there is in that a gaze, a combination of tenderness, amusement, and regret, so powerful in its restraint that one cannot look for long. The secret is too plain, the pity of its smarts makes hot tears spurt, that the soul is not a soul. It has no secret, it's small, it fits its hollow perfectly. its room, our moment of attention. So there's a sort of meditative quality. It's a sort of the poem so far feels very calm. It's different from the poems that I read oftentimes. But I had this feeling a couple days ago when I was reading some John Ashbery. Calmer, more sort of measured, more sort of quietly attuned to the beauty of things, just to use other people's words at this point. But we're like meditating really on this one painting, and we're now kind of thinking out loud about this soul which wants to move but it's staying put, and right there it's all being expressed in Parmigianino's face, right? It's being expressed in his face. Let me see if I can get that zoomed. What a labor of love, man. Okay, so that was a lot of that's the first real feeling that I'm getting right now. So far so good, pretty chill, nothing special, nothing spectacular at this moment. That is the tune, but there are no words. The words are only speculation from the Latin speculum, mirror. That's kind of a funny double meaning. They seek and cannot find the meaning of the music. Who's they? We only see postures of the dream, riders of the motion that swings the face into view under evening skies with no false disarray as proof of authenticity, but it is life englobed. One would like to stick one's hand out of the globe, but its dimension, what carries it, will not allow it. Where our soul is contained, we cannot go beyond the globe. No doubt it is this, not the reflex to hide something, which makes the hand loom large as it retreats slightly. There is no way to build it flat like a section of wall. It must join the segment of a circle. Interesting. Now we're getting into, that's an interesting ongoing sustained metaphor about life. This cube, it's not the same. We can just segment. We're contained in this globe, roving back to the body of which it seems so unlikely a part to fence in and short the face on which the effort of this condition reads, like a pinpoint of a smile, a spark or star one is not sure of having seen, as darkness resumes. A perverse light whose imperative subtlety dooms in advance its conceit to light up. Whose imperative of subtlety dooms in advance its conceit to light up, unimportant but meant. Okay, don't fully know what it's referring to. Francesco, your hand is big enough to wreck the sphere, and too big, one would think, to weave delicate meshes that only argue its further detention. So we're kind of dancing with this metaphor here. Your hand, you're trying to exceed. You're trying to exceed the boundaries of your sort of given life. Your hand is big enough, one would think. Too big, one would think, to weave delicate meshes that only argue its further tension. Big, but not coarse, merely on another scale, like a dozing whale on the sea bottom in relation to the tiny self-important ship on the surface. That's also a funny little, it's like a cosmic irony type of metaphor. But your eyes proclaim that everything is surface. Everything is surface is such a self-aware poetry statement to make. Everything is surface. There is no interior. The surface is what's there. Nothing can exist except what's there. Only what we see. It's kind of like postmodern sounding. There are no recesses in the room, only alcoves. Okay, let me figure out what that... Because I don't... So for me, when I think alcove, right, I think of a recess, basically. But what's the difference, right? A recess seems more accidental, and an alcove seems more constructed, I think. Maybe. Maybe. I guess that's what it is. These are like actually made things. There are no recesses in the room, only alcoves, and the window doesn't matter much. Is there a little mirror on the right? That little sliver, which in French is. And the window doesn't matter much, or that sliver window or mirror on the right, even as a gauge of the weather, which in French is le temps, the word for time, and which follows a course wherein changes are merely features of the whole. The whole is stable within instability, a globe like ours resting on a pedestal of vacuum, a ping pong ball secure on its jet of water. Okay, so this is John Ashbery going ham on this one painting. He's writing, like, for the love of God, as much poetry that he can utter. Like, he's just squeezing all the poetry they can squeeze out of this one idea of a person painting himself onto a surface of a wooden ball, like a concave mirror, convex mirror. Sorry, hang on, convex. Yeah, convex mirror. Wait, convex. Now that I think about it, man, I'm like, yeah, convex means it's bulging out, right? Concave means it's, depressed. And this ping pong ball secure on a jet of water. That's kind of an interesting. Like, we have the whale, we have the ping pong ball, we have the times, we have the hand being big to wreck the sphere. It's interesting. We keep dancing around this idea here. I don't know if I'm getting what I want from this poem, though. I want more. And just as there are no words for the surface, that is, no words to say what it really is, that it is not superficial but a visible core, then there is no way out of the problem of pathos versus experience. You will stay on. What is the problem of pathos versus experience, dude? What is that? To feel for somebody versus to experience the world as it is? I don't know. And we're stuck in it somehow? That's kind of interesting, but I can't figure it out. You will stay on, restive, serene. Restive and serene, by the way, are antonyms in this case, but like the word rest and serene, it's kind of it's an interesting combination of words right there. You will stay on, restive, serene, in your gesture, which is neither embrace nor warning, but which holds something of both embrace and warning, in pure affirmation that doesn't affirm anything. Okay. I get Wallace Stephen vibes for some reason, but softer, more pastel, less aggressive, less atheist, more like it feels, the balloon pops, the attention turns dully away. That's kind of funny, because it's like he's making fun of me right now for not focusing, kind of. Clouds. I don't know. Wallace Stevens, a little philosophical. Clouds in the puddle stir up into sawtooth fragments. Okay, interesting. That's an interesting image. Sawtooth fragments. I think of the friends who came to see me of what yesterday was like. I think of what yesterday was like. A peculiar slant of memory that intrudes on the dreaming model in the sounds of the studio. Huh. So we're talking about attention, how our thoughts are going other places. In the middle of the writing of the poem, in the middle of the painting of the portrait. How many people came and stayed a certain time, uttered loud or dark speech? It becomes part of you, like light behind windblown fog and sand. Until no part remains. That's interesting too. That's an interesting image. I feel very temporary, right? I'm just like ash. I'm dust, and I'm like a complex of dust from all the dust that others have contributed. These voices told all. The tale goes on in the form of memories in irregular clumps of crystals whose curved hand controls Francesco, the turning seasons and the thoughts that peel off and fly away at breathless speeds like the last stubborn leaves ripped from wet branches. Whose curved hand controls, which feels kind of vaguely religious as a question. I see in this only the chaos of your round mirror, which organizes everything around the pole star of your eyes, which are empty, know nothing, dream, but reveal nothing. I feel... So we're talking directly to Parmigianino right now. Parmigianino. I have to keep saying that name. I feel the carousel starting slowly and going faster and faster. Desks, papers, books. Merging in one neutral band, that surrounds me on all sides everywhere I look. I cannot explain the actional leveling, why it should all boil down to one uniform substance. My guide in these matters is yourself. My guide is you. You, the one who thought this was enough. That what your eyes see is enough. You are my guide. Like I feel like maybe if I was in college, I would actually have better language to describe this at an analytical level, like kind of like the philosophy kind of references, like the postmodern sort of thinking references that I can kind of point to. I can't do it right now because I'm just not conversant in that language. But it's like what you see is everything. That is the reality. And your sort of interpretation of it as a curved surface, it captures... only that is real, something like that, right? But it feels, the way that the poem is written and the way that it sounds, it feels enough. It doesn't feel unstable. It doesn't feel lacking. It feels enough. My guide in these matters is yourself, firm, oblique, accepting everything with the same wraith of a smile as time speeds up. that wraith of a smile, bruh. Dude. And as time speeds up, so that it is soon, much later, I can only know the straight way out, the distance between us. The straight way out is the distance between us. That's interesting. Long ago, the strewn evidence meant something. The small accidents and pleasures of the day. As it moved gracelessly on. The day moves gracelessly on. And long ago, that used to mean something. It's an interesting sentence. A housewife doing chores. Impossible now to restore those properties in the silver blur that is the record of what you accomplished by sitting down with great art. To copy so as to perfect and rule out the extraneous forever. Oh, interesting. 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 That's an interesting line. If you draw a painting as a square, are you implying that there is a forever? And in a way you are, because things are linear. It can keep going. But if you draw something if you draw a self-portrait in a convex mirror, there is no forever. It doesn't ever go on. It only goes in circles around itself, right? That's such an interesting observation to be making about this thing. For me, I find this poem kind of brainy. You know, we're really just thinking about the implications of this painting. It's brainy in the sense that it's a lot of appreciation for this poet and a little bit of like a fussiness. We're kind of making fun of Parmigianino a little, I think, and kind of poking at him, but. It's an interesting idea. It's this kind of poem is maybe a little too philosophical for me. It's not the kind of thing, it's a little too heady for me. But there is an interesting sort of timbre of like an interesting little, what do you call it? Like this warm sort of cozy feel that I don't write that way. That's not the way I write. But it's interesting that he can write it like that, you know, create this sort of feeling around this painting. It feels warm, you know, and also a little playful. But not a lot of jokes in this one, huh? At least not that I can see. Anyway, gonna reread that part. Impossible now to restore those properties in the silver blur that is the record of what you accomplished by sitting down. By the way, this silver blur is referring to this painting itself. With great art to copy all that you saw in the glass so as to perfect and rule out the extraneous forever. Interesting. In the circle of your intentions, certain spars remain that perpetuate the enchantment of self with self. Certain little imperfections, like little spiky spars, they remain to perpetuate our enchantment with ourselves. I-beams, muslin, coral. These words came out in the first stanza. Now I want to know what I-beams are. I-beams, right? Yeah. In physics, an I-beam generated in the eye without. Okay, and then muslin is like a type of fabric that I'm not cotton fabric of plain weave. Okay, and then coral. Do we have coral here? So I know coral. Let's go see that. Where is that here? So I'm assuming this is the more muslin. This around his. It's funny. His hand is rather large. And look at that face, man. so chilled out. So like, check me out, yo. This muslin. So fancy. But look at how spare this is. And where's the coral that he's talking about? Where's the coral? This is just sort of a... The I-beams is also not literally painted. It's just the I-beams between the viewer and you. The viewer and Parmigianino. Interesting. So where's the coral? There's no coral, I think. No obvious coral. It doesn't matter because these are things as they are today before one shadow ever grew out of the field into thoughts of tomorrow. What? Before our shadow ever grew out of the field into thoughts of tomorrow? Okay? Tomorrow is easy, but today is uncharted, desolate, reluctant as any landscape to yield what are laws of perspective. After all, only to the painter's deep mistrust, a weak instrument, though necessary. The laws of perspective are a weak instrument. Of course, some things are possible it knows, but it doesn't know which ones. Huh. The laws of perspective, the instrument of the laws of perspective knows that some things are possible, but it doesn't know which things are possible. Kind of an interesting idea, just kind of chewing on it. But this will not have anything to do with what is promised today, our landscape sweeping out from us to disappear on the horizon. Today, enough of a cover burnishes to keep the supposition of promises together in one piece of surface. One piece of surface. What a word. Letting one ramble back home from them so that these even stronger possibilities can remain whole without being tested. Actually, the skin of the bubble chamber is as tough as reptile eggs. Woof. Everything gets programmed there in due course. More keeps getting included without adding to the sum. And just as one gets accustomed to a noise that kept one awake but now no longer does, so this room contains this flow. Like an hourglass without varying in climate or quality, this idea of time is coming back. This surface, this sort of modern Einsteinian, modern physics-ish thing where everything's sort of like flowing, you know? Let's see. What's flow? What's flow is this? Everything gets programmed there in due course. More keeps getting added. It's like a flow. The supposition of promises is I don't, it's like epic feeling right now. I feel like something epic is happening, but I can't tell what's happening. It's just like this faint feeling of something that's like sort of sweeping together into a sort of epic whole, and I don't know what it is, except perhaps to brighten bleakly and almost invisibly in a focus sharpening toward death. More of this later, more of this later, which is actually like one of the first kind of jokey sounding things here. In a focus sharpening towards death, more of this later. Okay. By the way, we're all gonna die. But we'll come back to that in just a second. What should be the vacuum of a dream becomes continually replete as a source of dreams is being tapped, so that this one dream may wax, flourish like a cabbage rose, defying sumptuary laws. What are sumptuary laws? Private expenditure on wow, that's a type of law. All right, to keep people from being overly sumptuous, right? Overly consuming. That's an interesting. Often prevented commoners from appearing like aristocrats. That's an interesting idea. And we're defying. So we have a dream. What should be the vacuum of a dream becomes continually replete as the source of dreams is being tapped, so that this one dream may wax. It flourishes like a rose, like a cabbage rose. I want to know what a cabbage rose looks like. But this sounds very like black hole type of thing, like a cabbage rose. It's kind of an interesting word too, this cabbage rose. I've never seen this, but it does kind of look like a cabbage. But like, it flourishes like a cabbage rose. It defies the sumptuary laws. It's getting bigger and bigger. It's like a black hole. It's a thing that was supposed to be a vacuum, but it becomes full continually, and it's getting larger, and it's including this whole surface, this what's it, suppositions of promises or something like that. It's bringing it all together. Sydney, leaving us to awake and try to begin living in what has now become a slum. Sidney Freeberg and his Parmigianino says of it, realism no longer produces an objective truth, but a bizarria. Its distortion does not create disharmony, ideal beauty. It's fed by our dreams, so inconsequential until we notice the hole they left. So for me, I'm getting the sense that like John Ashbery is really referring. I mean, he read a lot of art criticism about this one painting, and so he's kind of reinterpreting the painting. So this is what do you call that? Ekphrastic. This is very ekphrastic poetry to me. Now I'm just trying to see. Most famous ekphrastic poems. Let's try it. On Seeing Larry Rivers. Yeah. So it doesn't include. Yeah. I want to see if John Ashbery gets included in these lists. Literal or lateral ekphrasis. Okay. It's a lot of yeah, and here we're talking about an ekphrastic masterpiece, which is talking about self-portrait. Interesting. It definitely seems like he's engaging in art criticism here. Hart, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Oh man. Okay. Let's see. I think I'm pretty close to the ending. What I'm finding though is, as I'm reading this poem, I don't feel exactly bored. I don't feel excited by anything either. You know, I feel a sort of warm, sort of harmony, and a little bit of like intellectual stimulation, and like a sort of interesting. I feel things that are interesting, but not in a sort of like spicy or sweet way, you know. It's kind of just meditative, this, because it's all about this one painting, and we're just really, really sitting on this painting. We're really just absorbing this painting. And so it has a strong calming effect. Even as we're sort of, philosophically, we're sort of upsetting the order of things, right? There's no forever, the meanings are all surface or stuff like that. I can't quote this poem right now, but even as we're sort of like destroying the sort of traditional concept of truth, I guess, just to use this word over here, objective truth, we're very peaceful. It's interesting. Realism in this portrait no longer produces an objective truth, but a bizarria, which is a great word. The form retains a strong measure of ideal beauty. Now we notice the hole they left. Now their importance, if not their meaning, is plain. They were to nourish a dream which includes all of them. Finally reversed in the accumulating mirror, the mirror that accumulates the surfaces, they seem strange, but we couldn't actually see them. We realized this only when they lapse like a wave, breaking up on a rock, giving up its shape in a gesture which expresses that shape. The form retained a strong measure of ideal beauty as they forge in secret on our idea of distortion. Why be unhappy, since dreams prolong us as they are absorbed? Something like living occurs, a movement out of the dream into its codification. Something feels very weirdly beautiful there. I find it very hard to explain this. Extremely difficult to explain this. But there's like this... Okay, I don't know how to explain that. As I start to forget it, it presents its stereotype again, but it's unfamiliar. The face writing issued from hazards to cost rather angel than man. For sorry, perhaps an angel looks like everything we have forgotten. I mean forgotten. Things that don't seem familiar when we meet them again, lost beyond telling. It's weird. It's weird because in a way, things that don't seem familiar when we meet them again, lost beyond telling, which were ours once. That like sort of nostalgia that isn't nostalgia because you don't recall it. That sort of fuzzy feeling that exists. I kind of feel that with this poem. Even it's like this strange feeling of it doesn't seem familiar to me, but I get it. But I've seen it. I had it. I had it once. Something like that. That's an interesting feeling to describe. This would be the point of invading the privacy of this man who dabbled in alchemy. His wish was not to examine the subtleties. He wished to impart the sense of novelty. Wait, is this by the same guy? Hang on, my computer might be crashing, or my iPad might be crashing right now. Okay, no, it's not crashing. It was just lagging. Here we go. Oh, so Uffizi is a Uffizi is a guy. Might as well see the painting though. Oh, I see. No, it's not a guy. It's a place. The Uffizi Gallery, and this is his other. So we are talking about later. That's such a different self-portrait. Holy crap. That's so extremely different. Later portraits by Parmigianino, such as The Gentleman, The Young Prelate, The Antea, emerge out of mannerist tensions, but here the surprise are in the concept, not the realization. Mannerism. I'm forgetting what mannerism is. Okay. The consonance of the high Renaissance is present, though distorted. The extreme care in rendering the velleities of the rounded reflecting surface. It is the first mirror portrait, so that you could be fooled for a moment before you realize the reflection isn't yours. You feel then like one of those Hoffman characters been deprived of a reflection, except that the whole of me is seen to have been supplanted by the strict otherness of the painter in his other room. We have surprised him at work, but no, he has surprised us as he works. The picture is almost finished, the surprise almost over, as when one looks out, startled by a snowfall, which even now is ending in specks and sparkles of snow. It happened while you were inside, asleep, and there is no reason why you should have been awake for it, except that the day is ending. And it will be hard for you to get to sleep tonight, at least until late. Is that the end of the poem? It kind of feels like an end. Okay, it's not. Okay, here we go. Huh. Oh, we had this quotation earlier when I was in Goodreads. Okay, let's keep going. Oops. Awkward. The shadow of the city injects its own urgency. Rome. His inventions amazed the soldiers. They decided to spare his life. Vienna, where the painting is together today, I saw it in 59. New York, which is a logarithm of other cities, which is such a great description of New York. Oh my God. Such an amazing description of New York. Our landscape is alive with affiliations, shuttlings, businesses carried on by look, gesture, hearsay. It's another life to the city. The backing of the looking glass, unidentified but precisely sketched studio, wants to siphon off the life of the studio, deflate its match space to enactment, to island it. To island is something. That's an interesting verb. That operation has been temporarily stalled. A new preciosity in the wind. Can you stand it, Francesco? Are you strong enough for it? Brings what it knows not. Very biblical phrasing, by the way. They know what it knows not. They know not what they do. Is self-propelled, blind, has no notion of itself. It's an inertia, saps all activity. It can be felt. A word that can't be understood but can be felt, moving outward. So we have a little bit of a tension now. Some tension is coming in. Like there's a tension that's coming from this thing that's sweeping through, this word that can be felt. And it's like Parmigianino might not be able to stand up to it. What is this thing? I have no idea what he's referring to. Moving outward along the capes and peninsulas of your nervures, and so to the archipelagos and to the bathed air secrecy of the nervous sea. Now, nervure is such an interesting word, and I'm trying to figure out, hollow veins that form the framework of an insect's wing. Okay. And, it does sound like nerves, so that's interesting. This is its negative side, its positive side, making you notice life. Wait, the negative side of what? Of the something new. But when we say negative side and positive side, it does sound like it's a convex or concave thing. Is making you notice life and the stresses that only seem to go away, but now, as this new mode questions, are seen to be hastening out of style. If they are to become classics, they must decide which side they are on. This seems like a poetic tract. We're talking about a new art, it sounds like. And it's going to be different from the art of the Renaissance, of the high Renaissance, of the mannerism, something like that. They must decide which side they're on. Their reticence has undermined the urban scenery, made its ambiguities look willful and tired, the games of an old man. What we need now is this unlikely hero, unlikely challenger, pounding on the gates of an amazed castle. Your argument, Francesco, had begun to grow stale as no answer or answers were forthcoming. Now we're actually... okay, we're turning... Interesting. We were fully absorbed in the Francesco, in the Parmigianino painting. We're fully absorbing it. And now there's a new wind. And and now we're almost, it looks like we're criticizing Parmigianino. Now you're old, dude. Now you're old. There's something else happening. And what is this other thing that's happening? And I don't know enough art history to really be able to talk about this in any conversant way. If it dissolves now to dust, but maybe your time had come. It may be that another life is stalked there in recesses no one knew of, that not we are in charge, and that we are in fact it, if we could get back to it, relive some of the way it looked, turn our faces to the globe as it sets, and still be coming out all right, nerves normal, breath normal. Since it is a metaphor made to include us, we are part of it, can live in it. We now see will not take place. Okay. An orderly way that means to menace nobody, the normal way things are done, like the concentric growing up of days around the life. Correctly, if you think about it. What? That's interesting. Interesting images going on here. Very sort of natural image for the way life works. The days grow around a life in a concentric way, kind of like a tree, right? It's orderly. It's not trying to be menacing. But what is this? It, right? Like a breeze, like the turning of a page, brings back your face. The moment takes such a big bite out of the haze of pleasant intuition. It comes after that locking into place is death itself, as Berwick said of a phrase in Mahler's Ninth, or to quote Imogen and Cymbeline. There cannot be a pinch in death more sharp than this. For though only exercise or tactic, it carries the momentum of a conviction that had been building. Mere forgetfulness cannot remove it, nor wishing it back. What is this it? There's something that's happening that's very violent, and I don't fully understand it, and it's irreversible. It's in the white precipitate of its stream, in the climate of sighs flung across our world, a cloth over a birdcage. Okay. But it is certain that what is beautiful seems so only in relation to a specific life, experienced or not, channeled into some form. Beauty is only in relation to some life experienced or not. Steeped in the nostalgia of a collective past, the light sinks today with an enthusiasm I have known elsewhere, known why it seems meaningful that others felt this way years ago. I go on consulting this mirror that is no longer mine, for as my breast vacancy has to be my portion this time, and the vase is always full, because there's only just so much room. And it accommodates everything. The sample one sees is not to be taken as merely that, but as everything, as it may be imagined outside time. Not as a gesture, but as all in the refined, assimilable state. But what is this universe the porch of? As it veers in and out, back and forth. That's a crazy image, by the way. What is this universe the porch of? Refusing to surround us is still the only thing we can see. Refusing to surround us. So there's this thing. And it's not global, it's not globular, it's different from Parmigianino, and it's the sample one sees is not to be taken as merely that, but as everything as it may be imagined outside time. So there's something beyond what we see. So this is the opposite of what was being said at the very beginning of the poem. But what is this universe the porch of? What is it though, right? Love once tipped the scales, but now is shadowed, invisible, though mysteriously present around somewhere. But we know it cannot be sandwiched between two adjacent moments, that its windings lead nowhere except to further tributaries. That's such a sad. And that these empty themselves into a vague sense of something that can never be known, even though it seems likely that each of us knows what it is and is capable of communicating this love to the other. That's a very frustrating image, honestly. Love is shadowed, invisible, present, around. It can't be sandwiched. Its windings are leading nowhere. The tributaries empty themselves into a vague sense. And we can communicate it. We know what it is, but we don't know it. The look somewhere as a sign makes one want to push forward, ignoring the apparent naivete of the attempt, not caring that no one is listening since the light has been lit once and for all in their eyes and is present unimpaired. So we're kind of contrary to this whole surface is everything idea right now. We're kind of against that idea of the surface being everything. There's something incommunicable, something beyond the surface. The surface isn't everything. But and love is part of it. On the special surface of it, there seems no special reason why that on the surface of it, there seems no special reason why that light should be focused by love. Huh. If you're only looking at the surface, there seems no special reason why that light should be focused by love. But there is still love. That's what he's saying, I think. Or why the city falling with its beautiful suburbs into space, always less clear, less defined. I want to finish this question. I'm very interested in this question. Or why the city should read as the support of its progress. The city is the easel upon which the drama unfolded to its own satisfaction and to the end of our dreaming as we had never imagined it would end. The city... John Ashbery seems to be rejecting a certain kind of postmodern interpretation of phenomena. And there's something that pushes us. It's the dreams or something. And it's kind of romantic. And I'm kind of touched right now, even though I don't really know what the hell he's saying. Like, it's a feeling that I have from all these words. As we had never imagined it would end in warm daylight with a painted promise showing through as a gauge, a bond. What is a gauge? I see. A guarantee of good faith. Okay, it's like a collateral. This nondescript, never to be defined daytime is the secret of where it takes place, and we can no longer return to the various conflicting statements gathered, lapses of memory of the principal witnesses. I did not understand that sentence whatsoever. This nondescript, we're in a daytime of some sort. Oh, the city is the drama unfolded to its own satisfaction to the end of our dreaming, as we had never imagined it would end. It's ending in a warm daylight with a painted promise showing through a gauge of bond. This daylight, this daytime, is the secret of where it takes place. What's this thing that's taking place? And we can no longer return to the various conflicting statements gathered. We can't return back to the court. All we know is that we're a little early. What a shocking line there. All we know is that we are a little early. That today has that special lapidary todayness. Lapidary means like concise, I think. Kind of witty and concise. Is that what that means? No. Has a lapidary todayness. Has a sort of engraved todayness. That's also a crazy line. It's sort of beautiful. That the sunlight reproduces faithfully in casting twig shadows on blithe sidewalks. No previous day would have been like this. I used to think they were all alike, but that the present always looked the same to everybody. But this confusion drains away as one is always cresting into one's present. Yet the poetic, straw-colored space of the long corridor that leads back to the painting, it's darkening opposite. Is this some figment of art, not to be imagined as real, let alone special? So I think that's a rhetorical question that says no. No. The poetic straw-colored space of the long corridor that leads back to the painting is not some fiction of art. It is real. It is special. Has in it Two, its lair in the present we are always escaping from and falling back into as the water wheel of days pursues its uneventful, even serene course. I think it is trying to say it is today, and we must get out of it even as the public is pushing through the museum now so as to be out by closing time. It's actually kind of hilarious that he situates himself in the museum. You can't live there. The gray glaze of the past attacks all know-how. Secrets of wash and finish that took a lifetime to learn and are reduced to the status of black and white illustrations in a book, where color plates are rare. That is, all time reduces to no special time. No one alludes to the change. To do so, I find it really hard to track kind of like his position, the speaker's position on like the sort of philosophical journey through like what reality is, with postmodernism. And it's now at this point that I'm starting to feel tired. So tired enough to see how long this poem is. Like, I've been pretty engaged this whole time, but in a way where I don't even fully know what I'm thinking of. I'm just sort of going along for the ride. And I think that's the last. Wow. Okay, so if there's 4 more pages, that's not too bad for me. I can definitely do that. But now, to be honest, at this point, I feel a little, how would I say it, lost. What got me a lot of excitement was this idea of John Ashbery or the speaker sort of rejecting Parmigianino. But now I don't know where we're going, because the rejection happened a while ago. So then, and then maybe there's a new idea that came out that I didn't catch. Okay. But right now we're in the museum. We're leaving the museum, and I don't really know where to focus at this point. Okay. And all time reduces to no special time. We're all in the present. I don't know. Like, this seems kind of banal to me. No one alludes to the change. To do so might involve calling attention to oneself, which would augment the dread of not getting out before having seen the whole collection. We're in the museum right now. We want to see, except for the sculpture. We have a random joke here. I don't know where we're going. Our time gets to be veiled, compromised by the portrait's will to endure. It hints at our own, I mean. It hints at our own will to endure, which we were hoping to keep hidden. We don't need paintings or doggerel written by mature poets when the explosion is so precise, so fine. That's an interesting set of lines. Is there any point even in acknowledging the existence of all that? Does it exist? Certainly the leisure to indulge stately pastimes doesn't anymore. Today has no margins. The event arrives flush with its edges. Today has no margins. What a crazy sentence. Is of the same substance. I guess the focus right now is on the idea of time, the idea of the present, the idea of today. Play is something else. It exists in a society specifically organized as a demonstration of itself. So play and time is very different. There is no other way, and those assholes who would confuse everything with their mirror games. Okay, I feel like we're maybe criticizing Parmigianino again, which seem to multiply stakes and possibilities, or at least confuse issues by means of an investing aura that would corrode the architecture of the whole in a haze of suppressed mockery, are beside the point. They are out of the game, which doesn't exist until they're out of it. It seems like a very hostile universe, but as the principle of each individual thing is hostile to, exists at the expense of all the others, as philosophers have often pointed out. It seems like a hostile, but it exists at the expense of all the others. At least this thing, the mute, undivided present, has the justification of logic, which in this instance isn't a bad thing, or it wouldn't be if the way of telling didn't somehow intrude. The present is being intruded on by the way of telling, and it twists the end result of the present into a caricature of itself. This always happens. Like, is this talking about language right now? We're talking about how poetry and language, we're kind of always fucking up the present. Is something like that? happens as in the game where a whispered phrase passes around the room, this is telephone, ends up as something completely different. It is the principle that makes works of art so unlike what the artist intended. We're talking about art. We're talking about creation of art. Often he finds he omitted the thing he started out to say in the first place. Seduced by the flowers, by the pleasures, he blames himself, even though he sacrificed. He's secretly satisfied, imagining he had a say in the matter. You never really had a say in the matter. It's just this thing, this art, this happens. It just happens. So as to create something new for itself, that there is no other way, that the history of creation proceeds according to stringent laws, and that things do get done in this way, but never the things that we actually set out to accomplish. Parmigianino must have realized this. Even as he was building out his portrait, he knew that he couldn't do what he wanted to do. He's like the present. The present always does its own thing. One is forced to read the perfectly plausible accomplishments of a purpose into a smooth. Right, his portrait looks like something he was completely set out. It looks like Parmigianino set out to write this, to draw this painting, to paint this painting of himself, and he did exactly what he wanted. But even Ashbery is saying even he didn't. Is there anything to be serious about beyond this otherness that gets included in the most ordinary forms of daily activity? Changing everything slightly and profoundly, tearing the matter of creation. We're talking about kind of like an entropy that sort of tears all of us, not just artistic creation, out of our hands, and it installs it on some monstrous peak, monstrous near peak, too close to nor too far for one to intervene. This otherness is not being us is all there is to look at in the mirror, though no one can say how it came to be this way. There's this thing. So we're kind of in the sublime right now. We're beyond the surfaces. There's this thing. It's like tearing us apart. And I don't know. A ship flying unknown colors has entered the harbor. That's kind of scary. You are allowing extraneous matters to break up your day, cloud the focus of the crystal ball. Its scene drifts away like vapor scattered on the wind. The fertile thought associations that until now came so easily appear no more. We're talking about writing poetry maybe, and dying. Their colorings are less intense, washed out by autumn rains and winds, spoiled, muddied, given back to you because they are worthless. Yet we are such creatures of habitat that their implications are still around en permanence, or whatever, confusing issues. The implications of what? The wind? Oh, okay, no, the thought associations. To be serious only about sex is perhaps one way, but the sands are hissing, the sands of time, I guess, as they approach the beginning of the big slide into what happened. Whoa, the big slide into what happened, whatever that means. This past is now here. Oh, okay, now the past has come. The painter's reflected face in which we linger, receiving dreams, inspirations. But the hues have turned metallic. The curves and edges are not so rich. Oh, hell yeah, these are very hard to comprehend. But comprehending is not the only point. For an average SAT taker, you're going to be completely overwhelmed. This is going to be extremely overwhelming. This is going to be super overwhelming if you're a high school student. But even if you're not a high school student, or even if you're not a great reader per se, I do think you can still... But I do think you do need a decent amount of background knowledge. And it really, really... You want to I don't know, man. Poetry is hard to explain, dude. You know what I'll say? If you read older English poetry, you're definitely going to feel a lot more confident on the history passages. Because older English poetry from England, okay? Like Keats, not Byron, but Byron. Who's the more famous one? The sort of fancy schmancy ode to aggression urn. I forgot him. Anyway, if you read older English, the Romantics and stuff, if you read older English poets, you're gonna get very good at English at parsing grammar. So that does help because learning to find the subject, learning to figure out the modifiers, learning to parse all that. There's no better place in poetry because you see such a high density of those kinds of sentences because they're trying to fit into a certain metered rhythm. Okay, so that's great for practicing reading. If you're trying to get if you're really trying to be like top, if you're trying to be like 800 level reader. But poetry, I would not generally recommend using poetry to study for anything. You should study poetry for poetry, not study poetry for the SAT. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The Past has just come out, which is crazy. It's like a new character just came out. And it sounds like John Ashbery as a speaker of the poem, he's like getting older at this point, which is interesting. The past is now here, the painter's reflected face in which we linger, receiving dreams and inspirations. On an unassigned frequency, it's like random. That's kind of funny. That's an interesting way of phrasing the word random. But the hues have turned metallic. They're not so rich. We're fading. We're dying. Each person has one big theory, but it doesn't tell the whole story. In the end, it is what is outside him that matters to him, who have been given no help whatsoever. Our man-sized quotient. We're relying on secondhand knowledge. Yet I know no one else's taste is going to be any help and might as well be ignored. It's always my own taste that gets me through my life, I guess. Huh. That's an interesting idea. Once it seemed so perfect, gloss on the fine freckled skin, lips moistened. Hang on, are we talking about the Nah, maybe not him. Yeah, we're just talking about something general, I think. Gloss on the fine freckled skin, lips moistened as though about the part of releasing speech. That could be him. And the familiar look of clothes and furniture that one forgets. This could have been our paradise, exotic refuge in an exhausted world, but that wasn't in the cards because it couldn't have been the point. We have to be outside. Aping naturalness may be the first step toward achieving inner calm, but it's the first step only, and often remains a frozen gesture of welcome, etched. We cannot just ape naturalness. It's not worth it. On the air, materializing behind it, it's a convention. And we have really no time for these except to use them for... We have to burn them up. The sooner they're burnt, the better for the roles we have to play. We have to be beyond the aping of the natural, whatever the hell that means. Therefore, I beseech you, withdraw that hand. Parmigianino. So right now we're in a sort of inner dialogue between John Ashbery and Francesco Parmigianino. And Ashbery's being kind of ironical, I think. He's being a little silly. But he's like, therefore I beseech you, which is not the way you normally speak. Okay. Withdraw that hand. But we're jumping up a tonal level. We're kind of like, we're changing our register a little bit. We're being a little I think, ridiculous, a little humorous here. Offer it no longer as shield or greeting, the shield of a greeting, Francesco. There is room for one bullet in the chamber. That sounds suicidal. Our looking through the wrong end of the telescope as you fall back at a speed faster than that of light to flatten ultimately among the features of the room. An invitation never mailed. We're flattening an invitation. The "it was all a dream" syndrome, though the all tells tersely enough how it wasn't. Its existence was real, though troubled. It was not just a dream. And this dream can never drown out the diagram still sketched on the wind, chosen, meant for me and materialized in disguising radiance of my room. We have seen the city. It is the gibbous mirrored eye of an insect. I think gibbous means like that fractal thing. Let me just double check. Oh, yeah, it's like convex. Okay, that's interesting. Huh. All things happen on his balcony and are resumed within, but the action is the cold, syrupy flow of a pageant. One feels too confined, sifting the April sunlight for clues in the mere stillness of the ease of its parameter. The hand holds no chalk, and each part of the whole falls off, and cannot know it new, except here and there in cold pockets of remembrance. Whispers out of time. Is this the end? It is the end. So it ends on a rebuttal. All things happen on its balcony and are resumed within. But the action is the cold, syrupy flow of a pageant. There's a flow of time or something, and one feels too confined, sifting the sunlight for clues in the mill stillness of the ease of its parameter. The hand holds no chalk. Each part of the whole falls off. The hand holds no chalk, I think, is pointing out a certain lie. Because, of course, the hand had to hold something to draw this picture. It's interesting. And cannot know it knew, except here and there, in cold pockets of remembrance, whispers out of time. This kind of feels like a Proust, in search of lost time. This seems like a sort of a reference to Proust, because this got published in like the early 1900s. Huh. So, that was that was interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna give my impressions first. Abhiram, I'll just come back to your SCT related questions in a moment. But first, I wanna focus on this poem, and first it was pretty long, dude. Wow, how long was I streaming, man? I didn't realize it was gonna be this long. That was 1 hour and 25 minutes. Now that includes pre-reading. Let me try to process what I just read, because that was quite a lot. Let me start with feelings. I'm just gonna start listing the feelings in as much of a chronological order as possible. The feelings I had were like a mild amusement. Okay, nothing was shocking, nothing was like surprising, nothing was exciting. It was like mildly amused. Also, I felt kind of peaceful, calm, okay? And like we're shattering the world, but we're just thinking about it shattering in a sort of beautiful way or something like that. I don't know, it's strange. It's a strange feeling there. And so I had this feeling that things were being upset, that the order of things, the flow of things, time itself, our experience itself, our knowledge of the truth itself is all being subverted. It's all kind of folding in on itself and collapsing. But because we're just meditating on this one painting, we're just really having a long meditative, and it's really a quiet and calm dialogue with like an old friend that we've known for like decades, really. It's not so much a meditation in retrospect. It's like a conversation that I'm having with Parmigianino, and it's calm, but it's like world destroying somehow, and so I sense a bit of cosmic irony, like something huge is happening, but it's being talked about in a very quiet way, and the feeling there was just a little bit of like there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance there, a little bit of like a weird, like a whoa, what's going on kind of thing, a little bit of sense of wonder, a little bit, a lot of confusion for sure, because I have no idea what the hell he's talking about half the times. So I'm like, but that's that feeling. And the other feelings, what are some other feelings I felt? I felt a little bit of surprise midway through or towards the end when we start criticizing Parmigianino, and then I chuckled here and there, to random jokes that were thrown in closer to the end of the poem. But it was not a funny poem at all. Not to me, at least. So it was a lot. It was a lot. but definitely quiet and not the kind of poetry I write. Okay, my poetry is more obnoxious, you know. At the intellectual level too, there's a lot of like art history and sort of like I don't know if phenomenology is the right, or epistemology is the right words, you know, but like a sort of philosophical bent, thinking about like what is real in this world, right, and what is important, you know. We had a little bit of a romantic spill of lines where we're talking about like, you know, still there's something out there that's like beyond just the immediately known thing. There's like a thing that we can't describe, and then we talk about like the experience of writing poetry, but then, you know, it's never what we intend, so something's beyond us, which sort of like highlights the sublime. I think what's interesting to me about this poem though is we don't experience the sublime in the typical way. You know, the sublime is supposed to feel awesome, terrifying, awful, you know, like huge. We're supposed to feel tiny, like it's like wondrous, it's like beyond us, you know, it's like marvelous, right? Those are like the feelings. That's the feelings of the sublime. But here we're feeling the sublime in a very mute, quiet way, I think. I really now want to see what academically, okay? I want to see what other academics say about this poem. Because I kind of want to match my thoughts to their thoughts and see what happens. But yeah, I actually like my interpretation right now, as somebody who's not, you know, an expert. Like, I'm not a English literature person all day, every day. But like, shit, dude. The quiet sublime, something like that. You know, I'm feeling that with Ashbery. So if I had to score myself, okay, on my level of engagement with this poem, I would not give myself an A+, because it didn't rattle me, you know, at least not yet. So far as I can tell, I'm not really rattled by this poem. I'm not broken by this poem. I'm not like, I'm not like renewed or reborn through this poem, right? I don't have that kind of dramatic experience with this poem. But the poem itself isn't that dramatic, you know? So I definitely don't have a low score. I'm definitely not an F or a D or a C, so I'm just thinking about it. I feel like there probably is someone else out there in the internets, okay? One of you guys who are watching this video, one of you guys out there, you probably can react to this poem better than I can, because you might have more of a connection to some parts of these things that I kind of like neglected, I missed altogether. So I'm actually kind of curious what other people will see that I wasn't able to see. But I think I did feel a lot of feelings, and I did stay engaged most of the time, except for that one time near the end where I sort of dropped off and I started losing track, and then I realized we're just in the museum, right? So I stayed pretty engaged, so I'm gonna give myself a B+. My reading was, I think, a B+. I believe there are other people out there who's gonna have better readings of this, better engagements with this poem. And I'm curious about that. So I think maybe if I do follow up, I might watch some YouTube videos of lectures for this video, maybe some readings of this video, and see how people react to it. But readings and lectures aren't always the best, because readings, people focus too much on the performance aspects of it, and lectures is too much like intellectual explanation of things that are not directly the poem itself, but like the context of the poem, like what the poem might be referring to, this like the art history, you know, but I talk about a bunch of other things that's not just the poem itself. So I don't love the idea of like watching more lectures or readings per se, but so I really wish somebody out there would do another reaction just like I'm doing, right? I didn't do a reading, I did a reaction. I'm just like trying to engage with it as much as possible. So yeah, I give myself a B+. I definitely think someone else could do it better than me. It was still good though. I was pretty engaged throughout the whole thing. Yeah, so that's my thing. I don't really have a summary reaction to this, man. This is just a crazy poem. Like it's a crazy poem. Um, um, yeah, yeah. Nothing else to say there. All right, so let's just wrap up with a little bit of Q&A. The sentences are huge. That's true. You took the SAT this morning, trying to get advice on how to improve your reading. Yeah, again, I would not generally recommend poems for the SAT. However, if you're just reading poems, and if you're just reading novels, and if you're just reading science papers, and you're just being a good, curious, hungry, learnings, growing being, then yeah, do that, dude. Do whatever is fun. Do whatever is fun, and just keep doing it. Following wherever your curiosity takes you, and you will definitely get better at the SAT as a side effect. You know. Now, if you're trying to do a focused study for the SAT, then no, I strongly do not recommend just reading poetry. If you only have 10 hours, for example, to study for the SAT, I strongly do not recommend spending 1 minute on reading poetry. I don't think that's useful for the SAT. So, you know, it depends on what you're going to do with your time. You know, are you already having an exciting life? You know, are you building a robot? Are you selling some new product? You know, are you coding a program to make certain things more efficient for students in your school? Or, you know, are you researching proteins? Or like are you I don't know, playing games and learning how to build and animate 3D characters? And I don't know, like whatever the hell it is that keeps you excited in life, just keep doing that. And then with the budget of time that you want to spend on the SAT, study the SAT effectively, but not poetry. If don't do the poetry for the SAT, do the poetry because you're excited about poetry, right? That's a separate thing. Bora, what's up? Welcome to the stream. All right, so I'm just gonna say, Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror, John Ashbery. I would not generally recommend this poem for most people who are just getting into poetry. Way too hard, honestly. Way too hard and a little too cerebral, you know? There's definitely way more accessible poetry out there. And this isn't even particular, like, I don't find this poem very entertaining, so I would start with more entertaining poetry, personally. But I do think, this is probably like my third or fourth time reading this in my life. And I do think, you know, like every time I read it, I get like my relationship with this poem gets deeper. But I don't know, it's not really my type of poetry either. I don't know how much John Ashbery I really love. So if anybody out there who's watching this video has more John Ashbery recommendations, let me know what they are. Hopefully this reading helped you guys kind of at least see how someone who enjoys this kind of stuff might react to the lines line by line. And I'd be curious to see how you guys react as well. All right, as always, in everything you do, keep on learning, keep on growing, and until next time, peace.